The title of my presentation is English Translations of Existential Processes from Indonesians, a study of three translator groups. This is a collaborative work between myself, Muhammad Aminuddin, Ping Yang, and Hiromi Muranaka. This is part of my ongoing PhD research in Western Sydney University to be presented in the Asian EFL Journal Virtual Conference and publishing 2020. The presentation will cover the following outlines from the introduction, methodology, research question, literature review, findings and discussion, conclusion, reference, and question and answer. The focus of my research is the existential clauses, and it exists in Indonesian and English. The process in a clause usually involves two reference. For example, the students learn translation by heart. Having two reference help the translators translate the clause. However, it doesn't apply to the existential clauses because it doesn't have a clear reference. For example, there is a bird flying in the sky. Given the issue, the study is investigating the translators whether they are following formal correspondence or producing similar structure or changing the structure or textual equivalence. Therefore, the study recruited 3 translator groups, 10 accredited translators, 11 teacher translators, and 13 student translators. There are 34 translators altogether. They were all assigned to translate an Indonesian thesis abstracts of Islamic study. It consists of 367 words in 3 paragraphs and in 11 sentences. And there are 4 existential clauses in the text, as you can see in the following sentences. The study formulated research question as follows. How do 3 groups of translators translate the Indonesian existential clauses into English? Will it be the same or different? To begin with, I'd like to bring you the awareness of language as meaningful choice in social context. That means language is used to serve 3 purposes. The first one is to construct social meaning. Language helps people realize a certain experience. And language is used to negotiate social meaning. That means language helps people understand of a particular experience. While language is used to transmit culture, that means people with different cultural backgrounds convey language differently. Then the focus of the issue is on a clause, and therefore the study used transitivity tool analysis. A clause represents an experience, and the experience consists of 3 constituents: process, participants, and circumstance. As we can see from the following example, the student learned translation by heart. We can see that the student and translation belong to the participants, and learned is the material process, and by heart is a circumstance. In English, there are 6 types of processes: material, mental, verbal, behavioral, relational, and existential processes. And the study focuses only on existential processes because it is the only verbal process that doesn't have a clear reference in a clause. Let's find out more about existential process. It is a process of projecting that something exists, and the participant is called existence. We can see it from the following example. There is a book on the table. Is the existential process, and a book is the existence of participant, and on the table is a circumstance. Given The fact that existential process doesn't have a clear referent, it becomes an issue for the translators to find the definite subject of the clause in the target language. In Indonesian context, existential processes start with ada or terdapat. As we can see it from the following example, there are two concepts of translation in this study. Ada is translated, there is translated into ada or terdapat in Indonesian context. In translation study point of view, the issue of existential processes is related to what Catford say about translationship. Catford mentioned about formal correspondent and textual equivalent in regard to the structure of the translation. Formal correspondent produce similar uh, structure to the original language, while textual equivalent allows the changing of the structure. When it happens, we have a translationship. Translationship is further divided into shift of level and shifts of category. The present study works at the level of a clause and it belongs to the structural shift. Now we come to the finding and discussion of the study. This pie chart shows the productions of non-existential process and existential process. We can see that 61.2% belongs to non-existential process, while 38.8% is the existential process. From this pie chart, we can conclude that the translators generally produce various verbal processes rather than the existential ones. From these following pie charts, the left pie chart shows about the productions of existential process produced by different groups of translators. From this pie chart, we can see that the accredited translator produce existential processes 42% higher than the student and teacher translators. And the right pie chart shows non-existential process. We can see that the student and teacher translators shared similar productions of non-existential process higher than the accredited translator group. From these two pie chart, we can conclude that all translator groups created verbal processes invariably, and that means one translator to another seems to produce different verbal processes. Although for existential clauses in the source language, the translators generated different target verbal processes, but mostly dominated by relational processes for clause 1, 2, and 4, and material processes for clause 3, as you can see it from the following clauses. Number 1, number 2, and number 4 belongs to relational processes, while number 3 belongs to material processes. The study also found new 6 translated English existential processes to have shifted from mental process and relational process, and it becomes existential process. The study concluded that the process shift from existential to other types of processes occurred as a common phenomenon to achieve translation equivalence. The study suggested that this linguistic recontextualization should consider not only the source language form, but also the aspects of meaning embodied in the forms. From the language acquisition perspective, it implied that translators, as the language practitioner, should take into account both structural and semantic properties of a source language and a target language. Thank you very much.